Okay, so we've got a base design that we've set up for a mini park, and we're going to transfer this from Photoshop to the Rhino application. Um, it's drawn to scale. I think in this case it was 1 to 20 or 1 to 40. I've set up some dimensions and I'm placing it as a background object in Rhino. It's locked, you can't select it. I'm going to scale it so that it's 1 to 1, and everything I model off of it will be also 1 to 1. So I use a place background command to set it up, and then scale it. As you can see, I have some dimensions that I've written out. These are helpful if they're annotated in the sketch, so that when you bring it into Rhino, you can scale it appropriately. Full screen the viewport. And then do a reference method for scaling up. Gonna have some espresso. So after I've scaled the image, I'm going to start tracing the basic forms. We have several areas: the sidewalk, 2 lawns, and a little plaza with some benches. I'm going to start out with the sidewalk, so working from the outset to the interior. I'm using polylines and splines. In this case, it's a polyline, and I'm switching between arc mode and line mode. And I'm working mostly in 2D at this stage. So I'm just tracing over the existing sketch. Here is the trace in 3D. It's a closed loop, so everything we're going to make is watertight. The reason for that is because we're going to extrude all these elements in the next stage. I'm readjusting the grid so that it's clear. You can turn the grid on or off. It's not something I use a lot unless I'm snapping to the grid. So I've traced the sidewalk, and I'm going to move on to the next part. Again, polyline. I'm working in the same layer, and I don't have to trace everything. So in this case, I'm going to offset the sidewalk by 10 feet. So here I've skipped ahead a little bit. I've traced all the objects, and I'm going to start extruding them. So everything is traced as it's shown in the sketch. And everything is in a closed loop. There's no overlapping or anything like that. So start by extruding the first part. That's going to be the little plaza. I'm going to extrude the planted area, which is a turf. Again, I'm going to trace what wasn't traced. Close it. Extrude it. And once I have all the parts extruded, I'm ready to go on to the next step, which is applying materials. So it looks like I've got all the areas finished. There's that one planter area towards the bench, which we could come back to and do in Photoshop. Another thing you've probably noticed is that I've started to separate the extrusions by layer. So I've got a layer for each object, the turf, the pavers, the benches, and the bench base. It's a really good idea, good practice to start getting in the habit of separating objects by layers, because one thing you can do is apply materials to different layers, and it also helps you organize your model effectively. If there are things that need revisions or changes further down the road, you can turn them off and on. So now I've switched to render view, and you can see all the objects have been extruded and completed.